And now your host, Richard Thomas.
Good evening, and welcome to It's a Miracle. Tonight, we take a look at the miraculous power of love. How time, distance, forces of nature, even war, cannot keep two loving hearts from their destiny. It's our Valentine to you. And we begin with a story that spans nearly 7 decades and proves that true love never dies. Like so many others, the Great Depression hit Otto Sloan's family hard. When his parents separated, Otto was sent to live with grandparents in Colorado. But soon, economic hardships once again forced Otto to move.
Back when I was 10, 11 years old, my grandparents sent me to live and work for Mrs. Rowan and her husband. So I went there to help and work there with them, and I did that for some time.
It was while living there that he would meet Betty Jean Hodge, the daughter of a neighboring farmer.
Wait, she's coming!
My earliest recollection was when I'd get on the bus and he'd be on the school bus already there. And then he would look up at me with that kind of a smile in his eyes.
She was a very pretty girl, I thought. I wanted to speak to her then, but I was very bashful, you might say. I never looked at her direct into her face or anything like that. I always cast my eyes down. I still do that to this day.
As the years passed, Otto and Betty Jean's paths continued to cross.
And there was occasions when Otto would come down with the horse and he would round up the cattle. And I would always beg him to ride the horse.
Hey,
Can I ride him?
I don't know, Betty. I don't know if you should.
And I said, no, the horse is a one-man horse. I said, it'd be better if you didn't.
All right.
Betty.
Come on, help me on.
I had asked him and pleaded with him so much that Dad said, Ott, you might as well let her on it because she won't give up till you do.
All right, come on.
So he was
Okay,
hoisting me up on the horse, and he wasn't sure just how to go about doing that because he was afraid he might touch me in an immodest place on my body. He was very careful of that. He wanted to be precise in getting me on the horse.
Ready? Okay. So I finally ended up making a stirrup like out of my hands and had her put her foot in. And I raised her up that way.
That horse just flew. I mean, full blast for home.
I hollered, drop the reins, drop the reins. She wouldn't drop the reins. If she'd have dropped them, the horse would have stopped.
The horse finally came to a stop at the end of the field.
And I looked up at Betty. You could see that there was fright in her eyes. You okay? Okay.
I kind of leaned over and he put his arms around my waist and I think I was probably trembling a little bit. And he said, it's all right, you're all right. And then he took me back home.
From that day on, Betty and Otto were inseparable.
I thought our relationship at that time was kind of like a big brother to me. And then in 1941, we started dating. And our dating meant going to the basketball games together or roller skating.
As their dates continued, Otto and Betty Jean's feelings for each other deepened.
We had been roller skating several times together, and a friend of mine then had a little Model A, and it had a rumble seat in it. Well, I and Betty was in the back in the rumble seat. Reached over and kissed her, and I really felt that that was what was supposed to be done. And that's what I did.
I'll never forget the emotions I felt when he kissed me. He held me close and kissed me so gently, and that just stayed with me for years. I never forgot it.
But the love that was blossoming between them was suddenly interrupted by the outbreak of World War II. And like so many other young men, Otto followed the call to battle.
The last time I saw him was when he came down to our place. And to see him go, it felt like I'd never see him again. That was hard. It was hard to see him go.
I went into the Navy in July of '41, and then they shipped us out of San Diego after we'd finished training to Pearl Harbor.
It was there that Otto would come face to face with the horrors of war. On December 7th, 1941, hundreds of Japanese bombers attacked the island in 2 waves of destruction. By the time the surprise attack ended, 2 hours later, 21 ships were destroyed and over 2,400 people lay dead. Otto's division of 122 sailors did not escape unscathed.
There was only 70-some of us left. So I lost a lot of good friends at that time, and it was quite a blow.
The only thing that helped ease the pain was Betty Jean's letters.
Though he wasn't much of a writer, I would write constantly because I felt it was important to keep his morale up. And I would write about incidents that happened, and I would send jokes and letters and things.
The letters kept their love alive during the lonely months at sea. And then, just before Betty Jean graduated from high school, something special arrived.
I practically was tearing it apart, opened that up, and there was a little jewelry box inside the box. And there was his string of pearls. My first reaction was that he must have thought a lot of me to get me a string of pearls. It meant a lot to me to think that he cared that much. And I think that was his way of telling me something, that he just couldn't express it in words.
Betty Jean was right. Otto was in love, and he was ready to ask for her hand in marriage. He eventually wired her to meet him in California when he returned to the States on leave, so that they could finalize their plans.
I got a telegram from Otto. Can I go?
But then her dad said no. He said, I don't think you should do that. I was really upset at the time about it.
I was very, very disappointed that I didn't get to see him then. After that was when things began to slow down a little bit. I didn't hear quite so often from him after he went back to sea.
As the war intensified and Otto's letters stopped arriving, Betty Jean feared the worst.
I had thought then that probably he was killed, because I hadn't heard anything after that. And there was never any more mail after that. I felt like that he was gone. Felt that way for years.
As the war in the Pacific stretched from months into years, Otto Sloan made the difficult decision to stop writing his girlfriend so that she could get on with her life. And when the letters stopped coming, Betty Jean had no choice but to face the facts.
When I come to the realization that I probably would never see Otto again, I realized that life would have to go on. And I began to date others, and I met my husband then, and we married, and we had 5 children.
As the years passed, Betty Jean would often wonder what had happened to Otto.
He was always there in the back of my mind, like a piece of my heart that had been tucked away and hidden for a while.
life continued for Betty Jean. And in June of 1995, she and her husband, Clarence, celebrated their 50th anniversary.
The years just literally flew by. And then come the time when I lost my husband, and he'd been ill for some time. And then my thoughts went to Otto, and I could not get him out of my mind. Wondering where he was, wondering if he were alive, just wishing I could hear something.
And then, as if someone heard her prayer, Betty Jean received a letter from one of Otto's cousins with an old photograph inside.
And it had my 3 sisters and myself in it, and it was taken in 1938, a grade school picture. I was so excited and so exhilarated when I got that I just had to get in touch with Lila and thank her for it. And I said, incidentally, have you ever heard anything from your cousin Otto?
And in reply, cousin Lila sent her Otto's phone number.
Hello. Speaking.
This is a gal that you probably won't remember.
And I couldn't believe it, but I had recognized her voice, and I told her, it's Betty Jean.
How did you know who it was?
I had recognized that voice anyplace.
The call could not have come at a more perfect time. For Otto had also lost his wife of nearly 50 years, and he too had never forgotten his first love. Soon, they were writing and talking on a daily basis,
Came back from the service alive.
and 58 years of separation quickly vanished.
I've got my wallet out now, looking at the picture of you and your sister.
That's so hard to believe that it even lasted all these years. And then the talks got a little more personal.
You just don't realize how many times I've wondered where you were and what you were doing and if you were all right.
We told each other our strengths, our weaknesses.
You're probably just looking as young as you always did.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, right.
And we just talked about everything there was to talk about. It was just like we were face to face. And then it became apparent that we were discussing marriage possibilities.
It'd be nice if our wedding could be maybe in your yard.
It was unbelievable that we could feel so much love for one another by just talking on the phone like we have.
Well, I can hardly wait to see you.
We had made definite plans, just over the phone practically. We're married. If anybody had been there to pronounce us man and wife, we would have accepted that.
In the summer of 1999, after not seeing one another for 58 years, Otto and Betty Jean were reunited.
My heart was pounding so hard that I just couldn't hardly keep it in its place. He took my hand and hung on to it just for dear life. And I whispered to him, I said, don't ever let go of me again. And he says, don't worry, I won't.
For better, for worse.
And Otto kept his promise when 4 weeks later he pledged to take Betty Jean as his lawful wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward so long as they both should live.
Betty Jean is still the little girl I used to love and still love.
He's the same as he was when he was a boy. And I've even told him that. I said, you look just like you were. When he puts his head down, looks up at me like that, I just see him all over again, sitting there on that school bus. And I wasn't sure probably at the time what that was really meaning, but found out later, 58 years later. We feel that our getting back together was a miracle. Our lives are like a dream. It's something that you just maybe would dream of, but not ever expect to happen. I think we're living happily ever after.
Otto and Betty Jean Sloan are living proof that true love can stand the test of time and that romantic miracles do happen. The newlyweds join us now from their home in Santa Clarita, California. Good evening.
Good evening,
Hey,
Richard.
Okay, you two lovebirds. Now here's the big question. What in the world gave you the nerve to get engaged sight unseen?
I don't think it took much nerve. I think it just was a gradual conversation that went on and just increased as time went by, and we just became more intimate, didn't we? And
Sure
talking
did.
about
Everything.
our weaknesses and our strengths, and I
right.
think we just knew each other inside and out
Right.
before we ever got to that place of commitment.
Okay, so how did Otto finally pop the question?
Well, the funny part of it is I never did ask her to marry me.
No, he never did. He never did propose to me. I mentioned it to him after we married.
Well, it's never too late. What do you say, Otto? How about asking for Betty Jean's hand right now on national TV?
Would you, Betty Jean, consider marrying old Otto Wayne any doll now?
I would consider that any time.
I think that's the perfect ending to the perfect love story. And I want to thank you both for sharing it with us.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Richard.
Thank you.
Could they be any cuter?